Welcome to Jets Rewind. I'm Marty Schupak, and I'm joined by my very close friends, Ray Clifford out in Ohio and Ralph Schrager out in, actually down in Sarasota, Florida.
And not so sunny Sarasota.
It's having a tough time with the weather, but you
We'll
look
fix
you,
it though.
you look better for it, Ralph. You look good. How you?
Speaking of which, what's the weather like from Miami it's supposed to be raining here all weekend. I'm wondering if that's going to
I
be.
think it's going to rain up in New York for a change on the weekend. I'm not sure, but Ray, how you doing?
Great. Beautiful day in the Buckeye State. 50 and sunny. We're beating out Florida.
Yeah, really.
That-
Boston's like that too. I'm going back.
I actually went out without a jacket on, just had a sweatshirt only. That was awesome.
Ralph would like this. I went for a 3 mile jog in shorts, which was wonderful.
Nice. I go for my jog and then I jump in the Gulf, which is right in our backyard. It's pretty cold though.
It is. The golf was good. Anyway, we're here to talk about the New York Jets. We have a lot on the menu. We have the T-shirt promo with the fan questions. But before we do that, Ralph has a classic trivia question, and I have a basic trivia question. So go ahead, Ralph. Ask yours.
All right. Well, we all know that the Jets' roots are from Long Island. Those are my roots. So the question is, can you name three quarterbacks who played for the Jets who played their high school football on Long Island, like Nassau and Suffolk County I'm talking about?
Ooh. High school on Long Island.
This one's Marty's got to get this
Yeah, I
one.
was gonna say, Ray, you're at a disadvantage.
I'm in a tough spot. I'm guessing.
What's funny is, interestingly, my question is also a quarterback's question.
Oh, I'll bet maybe we have a common answer. We'll see.
We could. Let me ask it, and what we're going to do, because Ralph is very high quality, we're going to save that for the end. We'll probably answer mine in the middle, but you guys can think about it. All right, here we go. There are 8 quarterbacks to play for both the Jets and the Dolphins. 8. I'm going to name 3 because they're very, very tough to name. So I want you to name of the remaining 5 as many as you could. All right, the 3 I'm going to name is David Fales. He was one. He played for the Dolphins 2017, 2018, for the Jets 2019. Another one is Kyle Mackey. Played for the Dolphins 1987, played for the Jets 1989. He went to that college juggernaut, Texas A&M Commerce. And the last one is Dick Wood. Boy, that guy comes up in every trivia question. I got to look at his record. He played for the Dolphins in 1966 and played for Auburn 1963. I'm sorry, he played for the Jets 1963, 1964. He went to Auburn. So there are 5 more. Think about it. Halfway through, we're going to go back to it. And we have a lot of things going on, a lot of questions from fans. We're going to take 5. Actually, we're going to take 6. I'm throwing one in from somebody we all know. He's not eligible for the T-shirt, though.
Rob August.
Rob August, yeah. He came up with a good question. Just quickly, the news is Jason Brownlee is out for Sunday. Carter Warren is out for Sunday. Looks like Wes Schweitzer. Well, I thought he was on the injured reserve. I'm not sure about that. So we'll have to see another Band-Aid type offensive line. Tyreek Hill is questionable. He hasn't practiced all week. If he doesn't play, that'll be really, really good for the Jets. One other thing I just want to add, it happened around noon, but the LA Chargers fired their general manager and their coach after they took a whooping last night. So
that was not unexpected.
Right. Let me just say this. Did you guys hear about it?
I didn't hear about it, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Brandon Staley is gone. GM Tom Telesco is gone. Telesco's been there like 11 years. I think he has 3 playoff games. So I think it's justified. But the one thing I want to mention, because this is a Jets show, the interim GM is a guy named JoJo Wooden. He's from Hartford, Connecticut. He played football in Syracuse. but he was on the Jets staff, scouting staff, from 1997 to 2012. His last position was director of pro scouting. So he cut his teeth with the Jets. His name's Joe
Really? Wow.
Wooden. I'm
Hmm.
sorry?
I said, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see what happens if they keep him on. But anyway, Jets are playing. They're going down to Miami and they're playing the Dolphins. And this is one game where they're actually at this time of year might be more Jet fans in the stands than Dolphin fans. But I brought this question, Ray, to Ralph. We were on the phone about quarterbacks who turned their career around. So I want to ask Ralph, could you name a couple of quarterbacks that turned their career around? We mentioned Alex Jones.
Alex Smith.
Alex Smith,
Jones, we don't want to talk about.
No, Alex Jones, his name, yeah. Yeah.
And Geno Smith and Ray mentioned Earl Morrall, and
I mentioned him, yeah.
you mentioned him, and there were others, but
guy for the Lions.
Goff, Jim Plunkett. Interestingly enough, all these guys we mentioned, and I'll mention a couple more who are pretty obvious. I got a few that are like #1 picks. One of them, Steve Young, who started out really badly and obviously became a Hall of Famer. Another #1 pick, our own Vinny Testaverde, who was horrible his first few years. I mean, he was Wilson-esque horrible.
Interestingly, they were both horrible with Tampa.
Right, yeah. That has so much to do with it.
Yeah.
And another guy who I was never particularly into, I never liked him, but he started out his career in Indianapolis. He was awful. And he actually had some good years with Minnesota and the Raiders. I'm talking about Jeff George.
Mhm.
Now the last two I'm going to give you are the best examples, actually. The best, because all the guys we've talked about so far, the one thing they have in common is that they all changed their careers on a different team. But the one guy who did it with the same team, and he's one of the great names in I don't know how we missed him, is Terry Bradshaw. Who was beyond horrendous. His rookie year, he threw 6 touchdown passes and 24 picks, which is just the most unbelievable stat I've ever heard. By the third year, they benched him for Jefferson Street Joe Gillum, and look what happened to him. So it can happen. And Marty and Ray, I'm going to mention another name, and I know you're going to get a little upset about it, but our own Joe Namath struggled pretty much his first few years. And in fact, early in the Super Bowl year, the locker room was split. The defense was really had it with him because of those 5 interception games. So they, in the old days, they had more patience because these players weren't under the microscope like they are today. But if Joe and Bradshaw are playing today, I don't know if they would have survived.
Yeah, I'm going to change the agenda a little bit. I want to hear Ray's opinion about Zach Wilson now, what type of game he thinks he's going to have. And then I'm going to read one question because it's related. So, Ray, before I read the question, what type of game do you think Zach Wilson is going to have this week?
I won't be surprised if he comes back to what we've seen before. I mean, this is going to be a pretty good step up from last week's defense. Yeah, I mean, they have really good DB. I don't know that he'd gotten away with a couple of those throws against Miami's DBs, but it'll be. I am interested to see if this is something that maybe his I don't give a crap attitude kind of carries over, and he's able to just stay relaxed and make plays like he did, because that's really what it seemed like to me. Was even going in the week, I had said he between his press conference that he seemed to have a, I have nothing to lose kind of attitude. And, and if that carries over and he still has it, he might be vastly improved, but this is a big challenge. I'm looking forward to seeing how he does, hoping that he does at least somewhat like he did last week, even if it isn't as good. I'd be very happy with a close second.
Right. All right. Let me just read this question because it's a little related. I want both the reactions. It's from a Ronald Brown in he just put New Jersey, 2 parts. He said, and I'm going to read both, and then you're going to react to each one. On October 29th, the Jets beat the Giants 13-10 in overtime. Did any of you think after that game that Zach Wilson and Tommy DeVito would each get their conference player of the week? That's the first part of the question. The second part is, this is interesting, and I'm going to get Ralph's reaction first. If by some miracle the Jets win out, Zach plays great, and the stars are aligned, and the Jets sneak into the playoffs, if Aaron Rodgers wants to play, what should the Jets do, and who should they start at quarterback? So you could answer Mr. Brown from New Jersey. Go ahead, both questions.
Who are you talking to?
You, Ralph. First answer the
Vito thing I knew it immediately. Of course. By the way, did you know that the Jets offered Tommy DeVito, but they wanted him to try out. They didn't want to give him money up front.
Yeah, I do know that. So
the second question is the question, and I sort of hinted to it last week, even though it's a bit premature. But if Wilson is playing at the level he's playing at and they make the playoffs, you got to go with him. If they get in with their defense and he's struggling, then you put Rodgers in.
Okay, all right. Ray, what about you? What was your reaction for them getting the player of the week? I mean, would you have believed it after that game, that slop game? And the second part is about if they make the playoffs, who do they play at quarterback?
Well, to think that either of them would have done anything and gotten other than roasted would have been a shock. So no, player of the week, no. But I mean, I didn't expect Zach to have a second half like that in his whole Jets career, and he basically had his career game in half a game. DeVito, I'm not saying I expected it, but I'm a little less shocked that after a little time to prepare him, he looks a lot better than he did against us in that game when he was thrown in in horrible weather and in a tough situation when he hadn't had much prep time.
Okay, what about the second part of the question?
I mean, is it if Zach plays like this the rest of the year, do they go with him over Rodgers? Is that?
Well, let's just say the Jets run the table and make the playoffs with Zach Wilson at quarterback. Ralph kind of gave two scenarios, but one he plays well, one he doesn't play well, and the defense gets him in. But I just want to ask you, is there any circumstance you see that if they make the playoffs with Zach, that they take him out and they start Aaron Rodgers?
Okay, well, let me follow that with a quick question. Are you talking next year, or are you talking if they make the playoffs?
This year. This year. They have a very slight chance, but
they do have a very slight chance. I think it's basically what Ralph said. If he's playing like he did last week the rest of the year, I don't know how you would take him out. But if he's kind of up and down, I think they'll immediately go to Rodgers, even if they're winning. I think if Zach's not showing a consistency, no way do they stick with Zach just because they won games. Because this team goes with the defense right now. I mean, the offense was great last week for the second half, but in general, we aren't counting on a lot of the offense yet. So the defense is what determines how far this team will go right now. And so if unless he plays like he did last week, I think they go back to Rodgers to see if he can kind of make the offense more like it was last week in general.
I just don't see how you can go back to Rodgers if they make the playoffs, even if Zach is inconsistent. And you know me, I'm not a Zach Wilson fan, but I just don't see how you could do it if they're winning and he's there. I just don't see it.
Well, yeah, that's the general word. They're winning, but how are they winning? Are they doing it with Zach or with just he's just keeping us afloat? If we're back to scoring 5 field goals and no touchdowns to win a game, I don't think that's a reason to keep Zach in there.
Right. All right. Let me put Ronald Brown. I'm going to put it in hermetically sealed box. We're going to go to the next.
Hand it over to Ed McMahon.
Right. All right. Sauce Gardner, he's kind of, in our mind, been up and down. I actually think the last 3 weeks he's been outstanding. But I guess the question is, how do you interpret his stats for the year? Ralph, why don't you start with this? That's the question, right, Ralph?
Right. So he has 0 interceptions. He has 10 passes defended. And to put that into context, the league leader has 20, and there are a bunch of guys between 10 and 20. Last year, Sauce had 20, and he led the league. So his numbers have gone down. And early in the year, we were kind of critical of him. But at this point, and I began to think right in the middle of the night, is he having a worse year because of statistics, or is it because they're just not even trying to throw at him because either of his reputation, or they just don't see anybody open? Because lately, the only play I can remember where he got burned was Jalen Waddle on about a 30-yarder, which I think if he had turned his head, he could have probably deflected. So I'm beginning to think that, maybe we were kind of tough on him. His tackling is certainly a lot better.
A lot better, yeah.
But it looks, maybe they're just not, receivers aren't getting any separation against him, because DJ Reed gets a lot of activity. And he's not a bad football player. He's a pretty good football player. So I'm wondering if it is that. I don't know what you guys think.
Go ahead, Ray, you go.
I think it's a natural, a bit of a comeback. Teams were willing to test him a little more in the beginning of this year, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was playing to that same level in the beginning of the year. I think he has improved though, and I think he's pretty close to where he was. I think, and I think, like Ralph said, you aren't seeing him getting a lot them going at him. I think that first game against Buffalo, they were going at him a lot, and a few other teams did going down the line. But it seems like that's a lot less over the last 3-4 games at least. And his tackling is better than it was early on. Early on, it was kind of disturbing. But I think, I think it's a net. The stats don't bother me as much as to me, it's all the eyeball test, and he looks a lot better to me now than he did the first probably 5 games.
Yes, I think he's really playing at a Pro Bowl level, and like Ralph said, we've been pretty critical of him going back to last year. I just wish to God he'd intercept a ball or two. I think that's the one thing. I know we all know he dropped that ball, but if he could just intercept like 1 or 2 balls, I just think it would really help out.
Revis only had like 25 picks in his career, and most of these guys who go into the Hall of Fame from corners are like getting 40s and 50s. I know Asante Samuel was really bitching when Revis got voted in, because he said, my numbers are way better than his. And you know what happened with Revis? They just stopped throwing his side.
Of course,
yeah. So the fact that he doesn't have the interceptions is, it could be a plus. It could be that they just don't think that they don't want to throw his way.
Unfortunately, Ralph, as you know, sports fans are statistic happy.
Worse now than ever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all worse now with the analytics and with the fantasy football, and just like we said, like Jordan Whitehead, who had a good game last week. He's got the 4 interceptions, and we thought we'd have more by now. All right, let me go to the next question. Maybe we'll do it like this. From Rob August, I don't know. I'll start, and I'll have to look at the depth chart. Rob has a good question. What players who are now involved or who are not involved with the Jets' offense and defense schemes needed to be added to improve both sides of the football? So what he's saying is, on the roster, what could the Jets do as far as personnel? And I'm just looking at the depth chart. I'll give my opinion. I don't know what they could do in the offensive line, because I've about had it with Mekhi Becton, but I don't know what the alternative is.
Bad.
Yeah, it's bad. I think they're doing a good job now with the tight ends. I would love to see, and this is going to come up, another question from a fan. I would like to see what Irvin Charles has. I really would. I like you guys. I can't stand Alan Lazard. unlike you guys, a lot of people disagree. I actually think Xavier Gibson could be a number 2 receiver. He
Mhm.
has really grown on me. I really believe that if he works on that, he could. On defense, you know what? I really have no criticism. I'm looking down. I had mentioned earlier I liked Zaire Barnes. I wanted him to get some reps. I think Ralph mentioned Chaz Surratt maybe getting a few reps. Now, this rookie, I mean, I haven't noticed him, but this Jarek Bernard Converse, the guy from LSU, I'd like to see what he has too. He gets some repetitions, but I'd like to see a little bit more. And considering what the defense did last game, I can't really recommend any changes in personnel at all, to be honest with you. How about you, Ray? Any changes that you see right now? We're talking about the roster.
Yeah. I'd like to see, although I know he got injured, so maybe that's part of it too. I'd like to see more from Brownlee. I'd like to see him get Abanaconda a little bit more involved. And the line, it's hard to grab when they're changing line every week because of injuries. And, we've had, I don't know how many different, versions of our offensive line put together over, just about every week it's different. But who was the receiver that got in late in it was one of our last guys we kept besides Brownlee.
I know who
Malik Taylor.
Malik Taylor, and
Well, he was from the
before.
Packers, though. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was from the Packers. There was another guy that was in
oh,
he was in the Hard Knocks stuff, and he was one of the last ones they kept.
Well, it was Brownlee and Gibson. Those are the two guys that they.
Gibson, I was thinking there was
Irvin Charles, the one I mentioned.
it might have been Charles.
Yeah.
I liked Irvin Charles too. Defense, the only one, and he's playing more now, so I guess that kind of answered that. But I'd still like to see more of Ashton Davis. I don't trust that Whitehead's really turned any corners. I think you'll have a game like that out of him so often where he's really good, and then it's back to Swiss cheese on whatever he does on the backside. So
Okay, all right. Ralph, anything? And after this, I'll read another question.
Right.
But
Yeah,
go ahead.
I mean, I 2 weeks ago, if you'd asked me, I'd always say I want to see more Ruckert and less Uzama, and that's happened. That's good. I don't think Abanaconda is going to get the touches because they're paying Cook so much that they feel committed to him. I don't know what happened to Roger Saffold.
Yeah, I was going to say that. What happened to this guy?
He must have been in real bad shape.
I guess he was, but
So that's about the only thing I can think of offensively. And Irvin Charles, I'd like to see. I'd try anything but Lazard. To me, he's a mess. On defense, Ashton Davis, I'd like to see more. I'd like to see Chaz Surratt play a little more too. I think that guy's a football player.
right.
And I'd like to see Will McDonald get some more reps. I feel like he's beginning to get a feel, and I think he's capable of making a big play or two in a game.
Did you see who he beat out last game?
Yeah.
Tunsil, the offensive, who's really a good player.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go right to the next question because it is related, and I'll read the whole name. I hope he doesn't mind. He's written me before. He's a good guy, huge Jet fan. He gave me, after the question, he gave me all these stats from this guy who writes a Jet article, which are interesting. But the question he has, it's James Miller. He says, Alan Lazard has been a huge disappointment. We've seen on special teams how fast Irvin Charles gets down the field. His coach at Penn State said he never had a prospect with more talent, and Rodgers singled him out for praise in training camp. I think we have everything to gain, nothing to lose by giving him an opportunity at wide receiver. And we sort of touched on, let's see if we can expand it. What do you guys think? I just want to say one thing. I'll start that I think his first reception at Penn State was like for 80-yard touchdown. I could be wrong. I think he only had like 2 or 3 that year. But unfortunately, it was right before a bowl game. He got kicked off the team for breaking team rules, which never came out. So I don't know if he's a head case or whatever he is. I just want to mention you guys and James. I reviewed a lot of film of him. I was not that impressed, to be honest with you. I just was not. And I liked him more on the special teams. He had like one or two games where he really got down fast as a gunner. I think that was pretty good. But I wouldn't mind seeing more of him. It's just that from the film I saw, I wasn't overly impressed. So let's give any more detail if you guys have it on Irvin Charles.
He's a physical specimen, and I think it's worth a shot. They don't have a whole lot else, so I think why not?
Okay, Ray, and you?
I've always liked Irvin Charles, but I guess he doesn't impress the coaches as much, enough to keep him around, but not enough to get him on the field. But I'd like to see him get a shot.
Well, here we go. We're starting our 3-week push of Irvin Charles, so he'll be there for what, the Patriots game, or maybe what's the one before that, the Commanders, or
Yeah,
Commanders, yeah.
yeah. We need some more Irvin Charles.
Yeah.
I'd be all for that. I think he's the kind of guy that seems like if he got the chance, he could make some play, be a bit of a difference maker. He's not necessarily a blazing fast guy, but he's big and he's
big. He's like 6'4" or 6'3.5", something like that.
And you can always use those guys in the red zone and stuff. So
yeah, you can tell how desperate we are here, spending the whole show on Irvin Charles.
Yeah, no. But then also, James wrote these facts, which are interesting. I think we know a lot of them. Like I mentioned on 2 Minute Tuesday, Thomas Morstead had a 6 punt down inside the 5-yard line. It's a career high in most of the NFL. I'll just read one other fact from the last game. Mekhi Becton was tagged for 3 sacks and 5 pressures. Pittman and Tomlinson each allowed a sack. Jake Hansen only allowed 3 pressures, no sacks. I got my eye on that guy, 62.
Keep our fingers crossed, yeah.
Keep your fingers crossed. All right, so I'm going to take James. I'm going to hermetically seal it and throw it into the hat. All right, let's move on to the next one. Ralph, you have Ralph is one of the only 5 or 6 people who listen to my 2 Minute Tuesday.
Well, actually, I listened 5 different times, Marty. So I hate to say it.
And you had a comment, and I'm sure you probably want to dig holes in my commentary. But go ahead.
Well, 2 things. First, you made some crack about Zach Wilson. That's 7 of his best 10 passes in his career were in the second half of that game, and he had some good passes, but it's a bit of an exaggeration. His rookie year, the Tennessee game alone, I can think of 2 that were better than anything he threw in that game. The one to Corey Davis where he's pointing, and then one from the other opposite end of the field to Keelan Cole where he dropped it in. It was a magnificent pass. Anyway, I know you were just exaggerating to make a point, but
and he also had a great pass. Game they lost against the Patriots to their tight end.
Beautiful
pass. Yeah. So maybe it was like 5 of his best passes, right?
Okay. We'll give you that. And the other thing, you talked about the 2 kickers who were both having great. I can't remember when the Jets had a better kicking game than this year. But the one thing about Thomas Morstead, and it's a paradox, is I don't know if you guys noticed lately, he's over kicking his coverage. And there've been some real chunk returns. And I feel like that one of them's going to break if he keeps over. I don't know if you ask how you can ask a punter to say, don't kick it 62 yards, kick it 48 and fair catch it. Because I'm getting very nervous with these bombs that he's kicking. And these guys have 15 yards before they're touched.
Is Justin Hardy doing his job, Ralph, as the gunner? I mean, what do you think?
When you kick them that far, and if they're not high, I know Gibson has had a couple of those recently too. It's tough. It is a paradox because you love, a punter killing one like that, but suddenly you realize that you're in danger of a long return.
Right. That's right.
The key on the punter is what's the net, not the how far you kick it, but where do they end up? What how many yards after the return, is it?
Right.
That's really what matters. It looks nice, like you say, when they boom them, but if they're going to run it back 35 yards, and who cares?
Okay, Ray, any other reaction to my exaggerated 7 or 8 of his best passes.
Well, I thought that was kind of funny, but
I have to
I like
to
to
stick
think
up
of
for my guy. Marty
Yeah.
and I, we're on opposite ends of the Zach Wilson bandwagon here.
Okay, good. All right, well, let me do another. I like doing this format. I'm slowly getting the questions out of the way, and they're good questions. This was from Mike from Massapequa, and
Ooh, Massapequa,
I'm
I
going to
like
start with Ray. Aside from Super Bowl III, the Super Bowl III championship year, what season does everyone look back on with the fondest memories in Jet
Ooh,
history?
good question.
Conversely, which season do you think there was the most unfulfilled promise? Well, I think that's obvious. But go ahead, Ray.
There's about 40 of those.
Well, besides the Super
Um,
Bowl year, what was the best year?
it had to be the second Parcells year when we got as close as I know Rex got us to the championship a couple times, but when we went up 10-0 on Denver, I thought we're going to the Super Bowl. Big mistake. But
Right.
that's the one I would, because that whole year was just a great year. With Vinny had, one of his, if not his best year ever, one of his best years ever. And that was just a fun year in general. So that's the number one. The others are, there are several. I mean, after that are to be bunched all together. A couple of the Rex years, a couple of the years under Walt Michaels. When we came close as well. I mean, all those were really good years. Sprinkled in with misery, because
Right.
mostly it's been the misery.
Let's get Ralph's opinion. Ralph, you give us the positive, and then we'll go to the negative.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Vinny year jumps to my head, but to me, that year they lost to the Dolphins in the championship game, I felt that was talent-wise their best team they've ever had. I still feel that way. Todd was kind of the weak link. And boy, if we could have that game over again. And Klecko wasn't even, because I felt like they matched up well against the Redskins in the Super Bowl, whereas the Dolphins couldn't handle their Redskins offensive line. The Jets defensive line was their strength. And I just, that playoff run was great. Yeah. So I'll go with that one. And full disclosure, Ray, when the Jets were up 10-0 to Denver, I at no point thought they were going to win that game.
I really did. I thought the way the defense was playing, I really thought they would. And then one mistake in coverage
Victor Green
opened up the gates. Yep.
He did on the give and
He's
go.
still going the wrong way right now.
Never forgive him for that.
Oh,
Let me give my opinion, then we'll go to the I'll start with the negative. I kind of liked the year where they beat Brady.
that was fun.
Because I think at that time he was just on the verge of being established as the greatest of all time.
Well, in our mind, he had that like years
Yeah,
before.
yeah. And to me, when that David Harris interception, which we ended up not scoring,
No.
to me, that turned that whole game around, and I was just ecstatic. And it was funny. And Ralph and I had spoken about this, but that one play, you could see that it affected Brady.
Well, he hadn't thrown an interception in the longest time, and I know the fans were shocked in the stadium too. I was right up here, so yeah, that was one of the more memorable plays as a Jet fan.
Right. And
I remembered in that game was at one point, I think it was the second half, and Rex's defense had them so confused because remember they'd stand up before they got into their defensive stance, and Brady pointed, I think, to his left to point out the guy who was the hot, rusher or whatever, and then it might have been David Harris came from the right and nailed him, and he had no idea he was coming, and he had him totally confused, and I'd never seen that out of him before. So that was one of my favorite points in that game.
I'll start with the negative, with the expectations. To me, it's got to be this year. I was just, with this defense and with everything going on, I was so psyched. And I tried not to get overly excited. I told you I heard these call-in radio shows and saw these chat lines like where's the first playoff game going to be, what time, and all this. And I'm saying tone it down. But this year, and again, I'm the biggest Zach basher, and to have him just in the first game, even though they won it, and it's just like every game up till like last week seemed like such an effort to watch. This year to me is like with the highest expectations, so disappointed. So I'm going to say this year, and I'm going to ask Ray, what's your year? What do you pick as the year with the most
I
disappointing?
think one of the few times that I actually let my expectations get too high was the year after my favorite year, and when Vinny dropped like a rock and his Achilles was gone. And I knew then, right then, we were done. It was so just like this year. It was like 4 plays in. Well, that one was what, midway through the second quarter or late in the first. And when Vinny went down, I'm on the phone with my buddy and said, our season's over. We're done. And basically we were. Ray Lucas got going late, but by then it was kind of a done deal.
Okay, Ralph.
Yeah, I think both of those are the two obvious choices. But I'll just add one other one. The Brett Favre year, they had just beaten Tennessee to go 8-3. Tennessee was 10-0. They absolutely eviscerated them. They were the #1 team in the power ratings. And I'm thinking, this is amazing. This team is going to go places. And they just died at that moment. It was that was brutal.
Don't you remember I called you up, Ralph, and I said, who was the backup? What's his name? The guy from Oregon?
Oh, Kellen Clemens.
I
Yeah.
said, Ralph, they and you thought I said they got to put in Clemens. I said, I'm watching this guy. He can't throw anymore. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
They're not telling us.
Yeah, you could see his arm.
He was
But
just
I remember his arm getting hit, and I think it was a Bengals game, and he was shaking his arm, and I thought, oh God, it was while he was throwing a pass, and I thought, I hope this isn't a problem.
right. All right, let me quickly go through the last two questions. Ricky and Islip, how much of the Jets' ineptitude over the past 10 to 15 years do you lay at the feet of Woody Johnson and his brother Christopher? To run through this, many failed GMs and coaches speaks to poor ownership. No, Woody didn't grow up in football like the Rooneys or the Maras, and he didn't really cut his teeth in the business world like George Steinbrenner or Bob Kraft. So I'll start with Ray. So how much could you lay at the feet of the Johnson brothers?
Quiet. I put more at Christopher's feet than Woody's, mainly because Christopher was the one that let Peyton Manning call him up and tell him Adam Gase would be a great fit for the Jets, and he was so enamored that Peyton Manning gave him a call that was his doing, getting Adam Gase in there. So to me, that's one that was just totally unforgivable. But I don't know if it's Woody or Christopher who was choosing GMs, but we've had some pretty bad choices up until Joe. I think the 3 or 4 before him were just horrid. So I don't know which one to blame though.
Okay, and Ralph, your opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at their tenure, the Johnsons, the first decade, it was pretty good, and I actually think Tannenbaum was a reasonable GM. Yeah, things went south after Ryan's team started falling apart, and they've made some bad hires. McCagnon was a bad hire. I remember they hired, I think, Charlie Casserly and someone else as consultants.
Wolf, the old GM.
Yeah, Ron Wolf.
Ridiculous. They
Yeah,
should have hired us. Great.
as Ray says, the Adam Gase thing was a disaster, and of course, it was Adam Gase probably who had some influence in them hiring Joe Douglas. And I think the jury's still out on Joe Douglas. I think, although it's the arrow's pointing down. So yes, I think they do take some of the blame. I don't think they take all of the blame, but I think give them about 40% of the blame. I'll say.
I think they've made mistakes. I think they're okay owners. I think they get influenced too much. There is some truth to that question that they didn't cut their teeth starting a business and building the business. And I always use the analogy, like Bob Kraft had the textile business, I believe in Massachusetts, he built up from his father-in-law, but he was in there like 14, 16 hours a day. So when he would show up for work and like one of their presses or whatever they do in those things, machines didn't work, he would have to make decisions. And I think that hands-on, it really helped him become a good owner. I don't think they're bad owners, because you look around, see some of these owners, they're ridiculous. And I kind of like the idea now that they don't want to turn over. I go back and forth, guys, on the coaching staff and Joe Douglas, because I don't want it to become like this guy Tepper in Carolina. You want to have some stability. All right, let me do the last question, then we'll get to the over-unders. Another big fan of ours, I guess I'll read his name, Richard Donahue. He said, I have a lot of questions about the Jet offense. I'll start with this one. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back next year, what do you believe the best solution would be to fill the quarterback position? Then he has,
Gosh.
I wasn't a fan getting Rodgers, but the two QBs I would have preferred aren't doing well. And he mentions Carr and Mayfield. So I wouldn't be good at picking the next quarterback. I think, Richard, you're very modest. I don't think the best GMs in football are good at picking quarterbacks. I do like your idea of picking two in the later rounds of the draft, but still need a veteran. And then he makes some nice remarks about the show, and he wants us to do a preview show for the playoffs, which we're going to try to do. So the basic question is, if somehow Aaron Rodgers has a epiphany somehow and says, you know what, I can't come back, what do you think the Jets are going to do about the quarterback position? I'll start with Ray.
Well, I think we discussed it a little in one of the shows. Maybe Ralph might have said it, and that's the way I would hope they would go. Is I don't think even if that happens that Zach will be back, but I'm assuming he won't. When I say this, I would like to see him obviously draft a quarterback, but they have to bring in a vet so he doesn't have to start right out of the gate. They have to have somebody, I don't know who the free agents might be, but they have to have a vet in place. So anybody we draft does not have to, try and take on this, media and all the pressure of being in New York right off the bat. I think that would be the biggest thing. They failed at it miserably the last few rounds. Hopefully, somebody along the line will have learned their lesson, but I don't see drafting a quarterback as a starter is the way to go. We got to have a starter of a vet to let a draft pick or two, if they go with a late round quarterback as well, let them sit for a year at least.
Okay, Ralph, what's your take on?
This is kind of a two-part question. If Rodgers does not come back, then I would get rid of Saleh and Hackett, because I'm not confident that they can develop a young quarterback. And yes, one element is what Ray said. You got to get a veteran, like a Joe Flacco. How's he doing? And sit this guy for at least 3/4 of the year, maybe the whole year, or maybe 2 years. If he's looking for a name, I think Caleb Williams will be gone, but Drake May and Jaden Daniels are two guys I'd be happy to draft if I knew we were bringing in an offensive mind as a head coach.
Yeah, well, my opinion is basically like Ray's, and I stated that first of all, you're going to see the way the quarterbacks are going to go under this year with injuries. These backup quarterbacks, they just up their salaries next year. So the Jets are going to have to overpay if Rodgers doesn't come back for a veteran quarterback, and he's got to know you're going to be here, but we're drafting at least one, maybe two quarterbacks. And I would like to draft two quarterbacks, as it was mentioned. So I want to thank everyone that sent the letter. We're going to do right around trivia time. The answers, we'll do the drawing. But now we come to the game questions and also the over-unders. So first, more combined yards, rushing and receiving. Who's going to have more, Breece Hall or Raheem Mostert? And by the way, how do you pronounce his name, Ralph?
Mostert.
Mostert. By the way, I just want to mention that most fans probably know, but the Dolphins' offensive line is depleted also.
Yeah, they've had a lot of
They have
coverage.
only one starter from
Yeah.
the first game, just like we have Lakeland Tomlinson. So
Yeah, they have an awfully good offense. So
yeah. Okay, so let's start with Ray. Who's going to have more combined rushing receiving, Brees Hall or Raheem Mostert?
I'm going to say Mostert. I like what Hall did last week, but this is again a different defense. I'm not sure that Mostert's going to have a great game either, though, because like you said, with their line, Tennessee's defense was given Tua all kinds of trouble. So if we can do that, then I think it's up for grabs. But just on past history right now, I'd have to go with Mostert.
Ralph, what do you say?
I'm going to go with Hall. I think last week I'm counting on him like being the same back we knew from last year. And by the way, I'm kind of sorry Miami lost that game on Monday.
I am too.
They're going to be a little more edgy this week.
Yeah, I heard they gave it away, but I'm going to say Hall too, mainly because of his receiving.
Yeah.
Turned into a very, very valuable receiving. Let's do the next one, and we're going to answer my trivia before the over-unders. Who's going to have more receptions? Tyreek Hill, if he plays, and I think he's going to play, or Garrett Wilson. I'll start. I'm going to say Garrett Wilson, but that doesn't mean, when you talk about yardage, I would give it to Tyreek Hill in any day of the week, but I think Garrett Wilson's going to have more receptions. Ralph?
Yeah, I do too, because Zach just looks at him first and second. He's just like first two choices. So yeah, I definitely, and I agree with you with the yardage too.
Okay, Ray?
Same. I don't, especially after he got hurt, but even before that, I don't know the number of receptions. I don't think he's the main thing. So I think Wilson gets, a lot more looks and chances. So yeah, Wilson. Yardage is a whole different story, but
Right.
receptions, yeah.
Okay. All right, let me it's getting late. We're running behind, but I want to go to, before the over-unders, my trivia question. 8 quarterbacks played for both the Jets and the Dolphins. I want you to name 5 of them. I gave you 3: David Fales, Kyle Mackey, and Dick Wood. Let's start with Ray. Why don't you give me 2, and let's see if Ralph can give me 2 others. Go ahead, Ray.
Well, I have 4 of them so far. So
Yeah, Ray, take care of business.
Ray Lucas. I'll do Ray Lucas, and then I'll do the obvious one, Mike White.
Okay,
I'll
Ralph.
go Chad Pennington and Jay Fiedler.
Ooh.
So the other 2 I had, I don't know who the 5th one is.
Who's the last one?
Remember what I told you guys. Whenever there's a quarterback trivia question with the Jets, there are always 2 quarterbacks you have to put in there. It's
Ryan
Ryan
Fitzpatrick or Jake McCown.
Oh yeah, Joe
Oh,
McCown.
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Josh McCown.
That
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it. So I thought that was interesting. All right, let's go quickly to the over-unders. We'll go back and forth quickly. Over-under passing, Ray, Tua, 290 yards.
Under.
Ralph.
I'm going to say under. I think the Jets are going to keep that streak alive of not allowing a 300-yard passer.
I'm going to go with you also under. I'm going to start Zach, 225 yards passing. I'm going to say over. Ralph?
I'll go over.
Ray?
I'm going to say under. I want to see him do it 2 weeks in a row before I'm believing that he can do it. He's going to throw a lot, though, so it's very possible.
Right. Okay. All right. Tyreek Hill, 160 yards combined, receiving and rushing. Ray?
Under.
Okay. Ralph?
I'm going to go under too, because I think they might be using him partly as a decoy this week.
Yeah, again, if he plays, I don't know how healthy he'll be. Last time he did those jet sweeps, the guy is phenomenal. And I'm going to say under 2. Tyler Conklin, 5.5 receptions. I'm going to say over. I think this guy's coming and coming and coming. I'm going to say over. Ray?
I'll say over, but I like how they started throwing more to Rucker too. That could affect how many go to Conklin, but I'm still going to say he's going to go over.
Yeah, okay. Ralph? All
I'm going to say under. I like 5. That sounds like a good number to me.
right, Ralph. Jets, 3.5 sacks.
3.5 sacks. I'll say under on that one.
I'm going to go over. I think they're going to rip up that offensive line. Right?
Good.
I think they will have a lot of pressure, whether or not they'll actually get to him. I kind of like the 3 number, so I'm going to say under.
Okay. All right. Points for the Jets in the game. 16.5. I'm going to go over. Ray?
Under.
I'll say right on the nose, 16. I think I'll go. I like 17. I'll go over.
All right. Give me your game prediction, Ralph.
Miami 24-17.
Ray?
Miami, I think will keep it close most of the time, 20-10.
I'm going to go with the Jets, 23-20. I'm going to ride the Zach Wilson train that I've been on from day one.
All right, I got a quick hypothetical question for you based on. I asked the exact same question last year before the first Miami game. If you have a choice of winning this game tomorrow or Sunday, 13-3 or 13-10, and Zach Wilson is dreadful, or they lose like 31-30 and Wilson lights it up, which would your choice be?
I'll start. Look,
I know what Marty says.
He's not going to be on the Jets next year.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anyone says. I go for the win. I just want to win. Until the Jets are mathematically out of the playoffs, I want them to win. Win, win, win. That's my middle name is Win. Go ahead, Ray.
Okay. I will go. I'm the same though. I'll never be happy if they, especially 31-30. I'll feel like they were ahead and then blew it at the end somehow. So I'd take the win, but you know, I regardless of how, I just want to see. I would love it if Zach had a second game like the second half of last week. I just love that, but I'd still want the win first.
Go ahead, Ralph.
I want to see an entertaining game. I'm sick and tired of crappy games.
Ralph, he's not going to be in the Jets next year, Ralph.
I don't care. I don't want to waste 3.5 hours of my Sunday watching an unwatchable game, as Marty Schupak says. I want to see something.
Watching 12 punts.
Okay. All right, we're going to go back to trivia. Let me draw the T-shirt promo and see.
We aren't picking one. You're just drawing.
I'm just picking one. James Miller, you win a T-shirt, James. I will email you. You'll give me the size.
What was his
his
question? What was his question?
His question was about Alan Lazard, and he wanted Irvin Charles.
There you go. It's an Irvin
Irvin
Charles.
Charles is the winner of the week.
Yeah, okay, good. So, James, thank you all for entering. We're going to try to do it in a couple of weeks again. All right, Ralph, let's go back to the trivia question.
All right. Before that, I know I'm feeling a little old, but I just got a text from our resident historian, Matt Lewis. He said that the last time the Jets were in the Super Bowl, the Dead Sea was actually still alive. So it's a long time.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So the trivia question is, the Long Island roots of the Jets were reflected, and we had 3 quarterbacks who played high school football on Long Island. And if you don't have any answers, I'll give you a hint. But do you have any thoughts?
I have 3 guesses. I have Boomer Esiason.
That's right.
Vinny Testaverde.
Right.
I put Jay Fiedler.
That's right. You got.
Yes.
Did you get that before I mentioned? Oh, he was an answer in your question.
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, but just because I was developing that question, it came to mind.
Yeah.
And I knew Boomer and Vinny did. I wasn't sure about Jay Fiedler, but I figure Jewish quarterback, where else would
Yeah.
he?
By the way, I might be wrong, but Vinny's high school, which I think is Sewanaka, I believe is the same high school that another famous Jet went to, be the only Jet to get a sack in the Super Bowl III. Who was that?
Al Atkinson.
Oh, I don't know.
Paul Rochester,
Oh, Paul Rochester.
Long Island guy,
Rochester.
as was Matt Snell.
Yeah, Matt Snell too. Matt Snell, the Buckeye.
That's right.
All
Who,
right.
who
Go
was
ahead.
Matt Snell's running mate in college, Ray? Backfield. Hall of Famer.
I was going to say Thurman Thomas. No,
He became a wide receiver and made the Hall of Fame.
Paul Warfield.
That's right. Yeah.
yeah, it's good. All right, listen, this was a great show. Thank you all if you submitted a question. Congratulations to James Miller, and the Jets are going down to Florida. I think they might be on their way now or tomorrow, and we're going to close this out. Remember to this time of year, I always say it, give to your charity or food bank, whatever. Anybody want to add anything before we close this out? Anything in the NFL?
My savings account is officially a charity now. So
There you go. Okay, Ray, anything? Or we're going to be getting ready for
Ride that Zach train through the weekend.
what I'm doing.
oh, Ray, you're gonna drive Marty crazy, huh?
All right. For Ralph Schrager, Ray Clifford, and Marty Schupak, enjoy the Jets down in Florida. All of you Jet fans that are traveling, God bless you guys. And until next time.